We got Rick Martel on the line. Let's get to Rick Martel. Rick, how are you doing today?
Good, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Just for the audience that doesn't know, Rick Martel wrestled over 20 years, started as a teenager, wrestled all over the world, AWA World Heavyweight Champion. In the 80s was, definitely considered one of the late 70s through the 80s, one of the top performers in the business, big stars, the model in the WWF. Made a comeback a couple of years back with WCW. And now you're wrestling on occasion still?
No, I've been wrestled since last year. I call it quits.
So it's full-time quits? Cause wrestling...
Retired fully.
Because in wrestling, you know how retirements are in wrestling.
Yes, it's weird to say, but this time, I mean it, especially after, my injuries I had with WCW, and I said, well, it's, I should really do it this time.
Was there a situation? Was it a match with Stevie Ray where you got hurt, where it was just kind of like because you had been off for a couple of years, you came back in tremendous condition,
yes,
and I think you hurt your knee, but then you came back and got hurt again. Is that kind of how it went down?
Yeah, that was my first match after my injury, and of course I had the injury after a match against Booker T in San Francisco, and so I had 4 months of therapy. Physiotherapy on my knee, everything was great. I came back, I got back into really good shape, and my first match in Las Vegas against Stevie Ray, he wanted to give me his finish, with the flapjack. And as you know, you have to put your knees down at the same time on your neck, so the fall is not all on your neck. And the last second before I hit the mat, I kind of got gun shy. I lifted my knee that was injured, and all the weight went on my neck. And I had like 2 vertebrae out of place, for a couple of days. So right there and then I decided to call it quits.
Okay. During that period, how long and what was your training like, and what prompted you to make the comeback with WCW, and what prompted you to leave wrestling for the couple of years before that?
Well, I didn't finish it the way I really wanted it to finish it. In my last 2 years, see what happened, Dave, I got involved with real estate, commercial real estate, a lot, and it took a lot of my time, and so in the last 2 years with WWF, I didn't finish it the way I wanted it, and so I want to make a comeback to make a really good, to finish it the way I want it, and I want to get back in really good shape the way I like it, and so I took a couple of years off my business, and I said, well, I'm going to go back to wrestling and just concentrate on wrestling 100% and training and dieting and everything, and I made a comeback, and I'll tell you, I'm glad I did, because I really enjoyed, working for WCW. I liked the way they treated me, even when I was injured. The treatment was first class. I never had to worry about nothing, about anything, about payoff, about, the treatment was really good.
Is there, if you look back at your career, what would you say now, looking back, would be your high point?
Oh, definitely, in Minneapolis, when I defeated Jumbo Tsuruta, which, by the way, I'm very sorry to hear his death last week. When I defeated him for the AWA title in Minneapolis, it was definitely the high point of my career.
Now, at that point in time, right at the time you got that AWA title, you pretty much were being pursued fairly heavily by WWF, and you kind of got the AWA title, so you decided not to go, and then
right.
Is that kind of how it went down?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how it went down. I was talking with Vince about making a comeback to WWF, and then I got a call, from Vern, and wanted to discuss it, and that's how it went down. Yeah.
Yeah. What as far as going to Japan and stuff? Do you have good experiences there? What's your thoughts about those trips?
Oh, great experience. In fact, right after I won the belt, in Minneapolis, 2 months later, there was my first trip in Japan as a world champion. I just got married, and I brought my wife with me when they're on a honeymoon. Mixed pleasure and business, and they were great. Barbara's, they were fantastic with me. They really give me the first class treatment there, and I really enjoyed it. I had a good experience as far as business also with them. Great people to work with, and in and out of the ring,
Let's go to we'll go to a call right before this break. Let's start with Todd in Maryland. Todd, you're first up with myself and with Rick Martel and Brian.
Hey, Dave. Hey, Rick. Hey, Brian. How's everyone doing?
Good. Hey, Rick and Brian, can you hear him?
I hardly can hear
it. But actually, I was going to address this more to Dave, but, I mean, it's a general question because I sort of wanted to address the racial issue in WCW, the racial discrimination suit, because I wanted to call last week, but I didn't end up getting a chance, and I feel like it's sort of being addressed a little bit off the subject of it because it seems like the discrimination is viewed more in a passive light rather than more in an active light rather than a passive light. And I feel like a lot of the discrimination is sort of inherent in wrestling and in WCW. And a lot of the time it's justified just by the way it is. Russo didn't intend to discriminate against people, or WCW didn't intend to discriminate against people. But I think that the problem still exists, whether it's being, attacked one way or another. I mean, I look at Russo's comment, I want to see Americans, on my American show. And it seems to me sort of parallel to if, some sort of governor were to say, I am going to aim to my white audience because they're the people with the money and they're the most people. It makes sense in a business perspective, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's right or that it isn't discriminatory. If you could just give your thoughts, I have more to say on the subject, but if you want to just, fire back your thoughts on that.
I don't know. We talked about it at length. I mean, there's certainly something there. I don't know how overt it is, and it's a touchy issue. I mean, there are very, very talented wrestlers that are not American and Canadian that have not gotten a fair shake because of the belief if they're not, they can't get over. And it's like a chicken and the egg thing in wrestling. Like there's everyone in wrestling, I think. You can come to and point faults and pick apart points and say, this is why this guy can't get over, okay? And if the bookers believe that this is why this guy can't get over, they're not going to get over.
Yeah.
And other guys, sometimes they'll look at a guy. I mean, Helmsley's like the perfect example. They looked at Hunter Hearst Helmsley and go, this guy can get over. He's tall. He's got a good body. He's got, great hair. And, he's a good worker. But it took him forever to get over, but he got chance after chance after chance. And, obviously he's earned his stripes now. He's a big draw. He's one of the biggest draws in the business. But very few people got as many chances as he did to get that. And it was because of, they said he's got, Luger. Luger's another example. It's like a guy who, nobody ever got as many chances as Luger. You know what I mean? Because everyone looked at him and go, we can make money with this guy. And whether people did or didn't in the end, there were plenty of guys who, never got that opportunity.
I think with Russo, it's not a race issue, but it's more an issue of the kind of wrestling that he liked as a kid or as he was growing up, and they just weren't the luchadors.
But, see, and those are very good points. But the difference, I think, at least in my mind, the key distinction is that when you're talking about a guy who's maybe short, who doesn't fit into his idea of what a wrestler's supposed to be, a lot of those people haven't been historically discriminated against, which is a lot of the basis behind a racial discrimination, too. In other words, a guy who's necessarily short, he hasn't, like a Latino or a black person in American society, hasn't had, this discrimination over a long period of time that's, going against his ability to make money over long periods of time. Whereas, you can say a certain guy has a certain view in wrestling. It doesn't necessarily mean that the same thing can be applied to a guy who is going to be viewed that way by a lot of society. In other words, like I take, when Harlem Heat first came in, when they gave them that gimmick with the chain, I don't see how that is so much their view of what wrestling should be, but so much their view of what society is. And that societal view is a lot more dangerous than just not letting a guy get over because they view that wrestling isn't that important and they need a certain charisma or they need long hair or they need something of that ability.
That chain thing in the 90s, let me tell you something, that chain thing in the 90s was so many decades outdated that it was really sad that anyone in wrestling would actually think that was what society would push the right buttons in society at that point in time. I mean, it's like, jeez. I mean, look at Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan. They were already around then, and it's like that's, you know what I mean? They were marketable to every aspect of culture, and here we're in this business trying to put these guys in chains to get heat. I don't know. That's kind of sad about this business.
Yeah, and it just, it shows how large the problem is. And I think wrestling has been attacked in a lot of ways, but that's one way that it really hasn't been attacked in terms of its categorization. And I think that while the issue with Sonny Ono and some of the other people, it may seem that it isn't attacking the right thing. Like a Juventud Guerrera, it's obvious that this guy, if marketed right, could have been a huge star, Rey Mysterio Jr., but if you look at a guy who's, borderline like Sonny Ono, I think that if you show in a certain way that they're discriminating inherently just by an idea of what a certain minority is supposed to be in wrestling, that it doesn't necessarily apply. The parallel that draws in my mind is if a lot of people attack affirmative action because it addresses mainly upper-class white women or middle-class white women. But that doesn't mean that middle-class white women aren't inherently discriminated against in comparison to middle-class white men. In other words, Sonny Ono may not be a manager on the caliber of a James Cornette, but if he's compared to, say, a Jimmy Hart at this stage who gets no heat himself, that maybe he's being treated in a different way on a lower scale, but it doesn't mean it isn't necessarily discrimination in one form or another.
And Brian's got to go because he's going to Tacoma. We've got Rick Martel here. Brian, you're going to be at the show tonight.
Yep, I'll be at the SmackDown tapings, and hopefully I'll put up a report sometime late tonight on the website, so you guys can make sure to check that out.
Okay, that's tremendous. And Brian will be here tomorrow at 6. And anyway, okay, we'll talk to you tomorrow then, Brian.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. We've got Rick Martel here as well as a full bank of phone calls. Let's go to Richard in Canada. You're next up with Rick.
Hi, how are you guys doing today?
Good, thanks.
Oh, that's good. First off, question for Rick Martel. I was wondering, what's your favorite match of all time in your career, and who is your favorite person to work against?
Well, I think there's it's hard because there's several for different reasons. Several guys that I enjoyed working with, for different reasons. First of all, I really, off the top, I really enjoyed, working with Tito. I really enjoyed that, hard. He's a hard worker and always wanted to give it all, and I enjoyed that. I like that. And also Nick Bockwinkel, had some really good matches with him. I really enjoyed it. Stan Hansen, always worked hard, and those are the guys that stick in my mind right now. And as far as my favorite match, I'd have to say it was against Nick Bockwinkel when I wrestled him. Well, there's two matches that stick in my mind, and it's funny, those are 2 one-hour matches. The one in Honolulu, Hawaii in 1978 against Nick Bockwinkel at the Blaisdell Center in Honolulu was one of my favorite match, and also in 1984 against Ric Flair in Tokyo. Really enjoyed that match.
Okay,
that was going to be a trivia question for later in the show. But that's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. No. I was going to ask a question of where the Rick Martel, Ric Flair, AWA, NWA unification match, which went about 40 minutes to a double count, I think.
Yeah, right.
As I recall, it was a super match. Where that match took place. But anyway, gotta come up with another one. Anyway, go ahead, Richard. I'm sorry.
Okay, isn't it funny to see, how in the WWF where they're giving people time to develop, that Chris Benoit's interview last night he's developed more so in a couple months there on interviews than he has in than he did in WCW in the time, because his interview last night was pretty darn good. It's, and the same with Edge and Christian, they're starting to cut some wonderful promos now, and I just don't see WCW giving the time for people to develop slowly and improve their interview quality to produce entertaining stuff.
They're trying. I mean, if you watch their TV, they're trying to give the young guys, Vampiro and Kidman get a lot of interview time, so they're trying,
But the problem is what they're trying is they're just throwing them out there to dry, out there without any backup. I don't think they're getting, Arn Anderson to, take these people aside and tell them, here's how you cut a proper promo. The WWF seems to be backing these guys up, waiting until they're perfectly developed to get on the mic so they don't make a fool out of themselves.
Well, they give them, they seem to give them a lot more structure. I don't know, Rick, what would you, because you work for both companies, I mean, how would you compare as far as, like, that aspect of preparedness and stuff? Of course, there's different eras and everything than now, but still, like, working for WWF, working for WCW in that regard.
Without any doubt, I believe WWF, as far as developing talent, Vince, you got to give that to him. He knows how to get the maximum out of each guy, and make things happen. He has a flair for this. He has an act for that. He knows how, and they spend more time also on that aspect, on taking a character, making it better, and how to make things happen for that character, as opposed where WCW, they kind of don't, they're so busy with other stuff that they don't really pay attention to that very, very, very important aspect.
Anything else, Richard?
No, that's enough. Have a good evening, and hope Brian enjoys SmackDown tonight.
Yeah, I hope so too. Let's go to John in Chicago. John, you're next up with Rick Martel.
Hey, hello. I loved you when you were with the Can-Am Express, Can-Am Connection.
Yes.
And also the Strike Force was actually my favorite tag team.
Oh, thank you.
I wanted to ask you, if I remember correctly, one of your last matches was against Booker T, right?
My last match was against Stevie Ray.
Stevie Ray, but
right.
But didn't you also you were fighting with Booker T for the TV title?
Right. That was it's funny. My last two matches ever in professional wrestling was against Booker T, and then my last one was against Stevie Ray.
Right. I was wondering what is your opinion of Booker T, because he's a guy that it always seems. He has the moves. I feel he has that personality. Maybe he doesn't have the interview skills as yet, but he could be one of the top superstars in this business. But for one reason or another, WCW doesn't seem to recognize that or put him in a correct situation where he can blossom.
Yeah, well, you got to admit that WCW, I was there anyway. Last few months, I don't know what's happening there, but while I was there, I know, they give, Booker T a decent push. They put the strap on him for a long time, and I agree with you that Booker T has got tremendous potential. He looks great. He's got some great moves, and all he needs is a decent push, like you say.
Right. It just seems like for me, it was like there comes a point where a certain wrestler will not, at WCW, like a Chris Jericho, like a Booker T, they'll hit a glass ceiling. Either because of the size of their skills or something, Yeah,
it comes back to what I was saying earlier about making things happen for each guy or, the character, where WWF, they just have the recipe, they just know how to make things happen for some reason, where WCW has a hard time doing that.
Right. Two quick questions for you, Dave. I was wondering, first question is, did you happen to hear or catch a review of Russo's remarks last night after the Nitro?
No. Tell me about him.
Well, one of the remarks was he was saying how the WWF can, they only have two people they can put the title on, and he can put the title, the WCW title on to anybody. And
so?
I was just wondering, does that mean like the garbage man in the street, if they're going to put it on Arquette and everything? everybody. And it just seems like he's just not, it doesn't matter if you can put the title on like 20 different people. It matters if the title is worth something, if that person you're putting it on is a good torchbearer.
Exactly. You could put the title on anyone, but it's got to be effective. Unfortunately, with WCW, and everyone knows this, is that the only guy the title is effective on, and I don't know why. I mean, I sort of know why it isn't. It's because he's got the experience, but it's the wrong guy now. But it's the most effective guy is Flair.
Yeah.
Whenever Flair has it, it actually somehow or other seems to mean something. I don't know if it's the way he carries himself on TV, but I mean, the reality is Rick's 51 years old and he shouldn't be the focal point of the company, but he is the best one in that spot.
And they totally destroyed Jeff Jarrett now because he's just now a total gimmick wrestler. It does not seem. I mean, whenever he's battling for that title, there's always something goofy that's going to happen that that he's going to win it by that. The blood falling from the ceiling, David Arquette, turning on DDP. He's not winning. He's not doing anything, on his own almost.
Well, that's just the way that heel is booked in this day and age. I mean, I think that's. You can't blame that on him, but I mean the thing is I don't know. It's like I don't see the logic in so much of what Russo's been saying because he's like if just as an example, if we go into the mid 1970s, it doesn't even matter the era, any era, there probably have been times, even the mid 1980s. Okay, realistically, Hulk Hogan held that title for years and years and years and years and years, and probably, with the exception of Savage, I mean, there were maybe 2 or 3 guys who probably could have held it at that level.
Right.
But when you got one, you don't need to go to those other ones. And he could have taken the title off of Hogan in the 80s every other week. And I mean, it's not like it would have killed the company, but it probably would have made the title mean a whole lot less if they were changing it every week rather than, changing it when every title change is something that people remember, 10 years from now. I mean, let's face it, every wrestling fan who was a fan in the 80s probably remembers, Hogan beat the Iron Sheik, and then, where he lost it with the match with Andre the Giant, and then the Savage got it, and all that lineage. And I don't think that anyone can recite the lineage of WCW's title from January to now.
No.
Fully. Who could? It's been like, 13, 14 changes already this year.
Yeah. One last real quick question for you, Dave. This just came up in my mind because I had heard the Radicals on a different show talking about the event at Dallas when they first turned on against Mick Foley on Raw that day. And I was wondering, I wanted to ask you because to me that 2-hour Raw was probably the best American wrestling event so far this year, as far as for the big 3, because it had all plot turn, good story, good wrestling in there, almost every match clicked. And I was wondering for you, for the big 3, what event in the first half of the year was the best to you?
That's hard. I really liked the Backlash pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked the No Way Out No Way Out. That's the one with the Hell in a Cell match.
Right.
I really liked that. I really liked that match. As far as there was a certain thing that gripped me in that match, and maybe it wasn't even good because really the Royal Rumble to me was a better match. Mm-hmm. I like Royal Rumble a lot, because the main events were tremendous on the shows.
Yeah.
The No Way Out, there was something about it. I think that it was kind of scary because I watched No Way Out with this idea that, please, I don't want. It was a different emotion. It was like, please don't kill yourself in your last match. You know what I mean? It's like
exactly.
don't take a bump that's going to kill yourself. So I was watching it it was a very different way of watching a match than I probably ever watched a match. But it was the most gripping match I saw all year.
Oh yeah, because they totally played against that fear, because we had remember seeing Foley, jump, doing the first leap and everything, being thrown off the first cage and going through there. So they played against that. When is he going to jump? How is this? And then they did it at the most unexpected time. So it was a great booked match. Okay,
John, we got to head out of here. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, Rick, real quick. How much of the current wrestling? I mean, how much wrestling do you watch these days?
None.
Oh, really?
I haven't watched any wrestling for the last 8 months.
Is there any reason? Is it something with the product, or just are you too busy, or was there any, you know?
A little of everything, I guess. I don't know. It's just maybe I don't know. I just it's been, you know, when I watch it, I just have this feeling of wanted to, I'm involved in it too much, or so. I just wanted to cut it, and just said, well, I'm just going to move on to something else. And for right now, I just want to put a little distance between wrestling and myself,
Was it when you were in it? Did you? Because a lot of people sense that it's very addictive. Because you know how like so many of the guys, they can't retire even when they want to, and it's probably in their best interest.
Yeah.
We'll touch on this when we come back, but think about this. It is a hard business to walk away from, and that's why I'm kind of impressed that you can say that and say I don't watch it. And when I asked you if you were retired, I mean, it was like you didn't say like, well, I could come back for one more run in a couple of months if I want to. I mean, it was just like, no, I'm retired.
Yeah, Dave, I'm definitely retired, and that you can't put that on record. I mean, I had many offers to come back, and that's why I don't want to watch it because I had some good offers to come back, and I just don't want to. I don't want to get involved with it anymore. I'm successful in my business and doing great, and wrestling. I had a great career. Things were great, and my last match, I walked in there in great shape, and I walked out in good shape. So I just want to leave it like that,
You were still a teenager, or were you just like at 20 years old when you first hit it pretty big in New Zealand, Australia? Whoa.
Yeah, I was 20 years old when I was in New Zealand, in Australia.
What led to that? I mean, you broke in. You were about 16 when you broke in, right?
I was just turned 17. Yeah.
Just turned 17.
In Nova Scotia. And what happened is, some guy got hurt, and they needed replacements within 24 hours. And so my brother called me. He says, get on the plane, and you start wrestling right now. And I said, oh man, he says, get on it. He told those guys I had experience with it. I didn't, and I went there, and the Fomori really liked me, Rudy K. And then he took me as his protege, and was going to the ring with me, and finally things got off on a great start. And so it was during my summer vacation. Then I went back. I was supposed to go back to school, and Dave, I went in one day, and then the next morning, I got up, went to see the principal. I says, this is it. He says, what, after 1 day, so you finished? So yes, I know I'm not going to finish my year, so I want to go back to wrestling right now. I don't want to waste my time. And I went back to wrestling, and I never regretted it.
So you don't regret that at all. Now,
No.
what led to you going? Because I think maybe the first time I actually ever saw you wrestle, which was weird, it was Harley Race was coming to San Francisco, and they showed a promo tape because Harley Race was the world champion, and it was a match from, and I don't know if it was Australia or New Zealand, but it was a TV match that he had with you, and so this had to be 70s, right?
Yeah, and the funny thing about it is that I wasn't supposed to wrestle Harley that night, that day in Australia. I was leaving Australia to go to New Zealand, and we're just taping my last TV match, last TV day, So all of a sudden I'm supposed to wrestle, in a tag match, and then they changed it for some reason. They said, Rick, we'd like for you to work with Harley, and I said, well, okay, great, I enjoyed, always I enjoyed working with Harley, So, yeah, no problem, so finally I wrestled with Harley, and, of course, he went over, and so I went to New Zealand, it was no big deal, and then all of a sudden I remember Bruiser Brody was wrestling then Australia and New Zealand. He was doing both places. Then he comes back to New Zealand one day, says, he took me aside, he said, hey, Rick, says, you're going to be hot. He says, he says, Harley sent for that tape. They're going to show it all over the States, I said, oh, man, me doing a job, at Harley, oh, man, because I didn't want, I wanted to stay away from the States as long as possible because I wanted to come back and, do a good start, make a good start, make things happen, and now here I am doing a job Harley everywhere, So And you know what? And that thing turned out to be the best thing for me because, you know, I don't know what happened, but I got calls from all the promoters, you know, wanting me to go to their territory, you know, back then, it was a pretty good match, and, you know, I don't know, it was the Australian flavor to it or what, but they wanted, you know, it really did good for me.
Now, did you go to, was your first territory in the States Georgia, or did you wrestle before Georgia in the States?
Yeah, Florida was my first place. Kevin Sullivan was instrumental in getting me in the States. You know, I was wrestling in Calgary, and a lot of guys, you know, from the States used to go, oh, Rick, you should go to the States, you'd be doing great. And all of a sudden, you know, Kevin came to me and said, oh, Rick, you should go to the States. I said, yeah, sure, yeah, I've heard that before, you know. And then say, look, I'm really good with the gram, you know, I'm going to help you out. Okay. And then finally he followed up on it, and thanks to Kevin, you know, I got my stars in the States. And in fact, I just thanked him, you know, when I went to WCW. I hadn't seen him for several years, and I thanked him for that, you know.
Let's go to Dave in Cincinnati. Dave, you're next up. What's going on?
How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good.
It was nice to see you the other day.
It was good. Yeah, it was good to see you the other day.
Actually, I was also going to point out Jeff Jarrett is going to be breaking some records. He may be beating.
Yeah, I'm sure he will at this rate.
Yeah, 2 records actually. 15-time world champion record, and
absolutely.
And he may be beating Lex Luger's record for most chances.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read like a recap. Like Vince Russo's comment was like that you can put the WCW title on Ric Flair, Jeff Jarrett, Scott Steiner, Goldberg, but the only people you can put the WWF title on is The Rock and Triple H. And he said you can't put it on Jericho or Kurt Angle. But my response to that is if Chris Jericho were to ever walk into or ever to appear on a WCW Nitro, he'd probably get the biggest pop of the night.
Oh, now? Absolutely.
Yeah, Rick. What I wanted to ask is, I remember in the '80s, I certainly enjoyed the NWA wrestling better, but like for some reason I was like as a kid back then I was a lot more drawn to the WWF characters, and plus the lighting and the production were way ahead of the NWA. But I remember reading some interview like a few years ago. You said that like that breakup with Strikeforce was a shoot. Like you said that you walked out, like that you like purposely walked out on Tito Santana at WrestleMania 5. What was that about?
Well, see, I was babyface, you know, and I wanted to switch heel, you know, and Vince and Pat Patterson didn't agree with me, you know. Nobody did, you know. Nobody said, oh, no, you're not going to be, you know, a heel. And, you know, people like you too much, and you don't have the face for it. You don't have the attitude. And, you know, and me, I knew I could, you know, and I knew I wanted it, and they didn't, you know. And so I quit, you know. I quit for Vince. I said, well, if you don't want me if you want to do it with me, then I'm going to do it elsewhere, you know. And I walked out. So, you know, they said, finally, you know, I worked out at TV in Tampa, and finally he called me back and said, look, Rick, you know, come back, we'll discuss about we'll talk about it. And, you know, nobody believed I could make a heel, you know. So that's how it happened. That's how we made it happen.
Yeah, I remember, I was a huge fan at the time. I remember I was like a big Strikeforce fan. I was just so mad that when they broke up. I also remember, didn't you go like 60 minutes at a Royal Rumble? It
was 54 minutes or 56, I can't remember, around that, you know, in Miami, yeah.
Yeah, I remember, even at the end of your WWF career, you were still wrestling just some awesome matches. I remember, some Battle Royal with Razor Ramon for the Intercontinental title. That was a pretty good match.
Yeah, you know, Razor, Scott Hall, I always enjoyed working with him, you know. Great talent, and always wanted to make, a good match. I always wanted to work hard and enjoy them.
Dave.
Mm-hmm.
I remember you got some email a couple weeks ago asking me the best Raw match ever. What do you think of that retirement match between Curt Hennig and Ric Flair? I remember that was
good. It was very good. I wouldn't rate it as the best one ever, though. I mean, in my mind. I mean, I remember. I remember Reno was really, really good. You know, I mean, maybe with Flair, the deal is that he had so many great matches that the ones that always stick out to me were Steamboat and Barry Windham.
Speaking of Steamboat, did you see that tape?
I have not watched the whole tape, no. But I mean, I've watched probably most of those matches at some point in my life that you gave me.
Yeah, that's a match that I really don't hear about. Is that Wyndham against Flair match? I saw that match and.
Which one? The Battle of the Belts or a different one?
There were two matches they had in 1987 that were probably like two of the best matches I've ever seen.
They had the one from Fayetteville, and they had one in Orlando. If those are the two you're referring to.
There was also a match between Flair against Jumbo Tsuruta. That was a really awesome match.
I've seen Flair and Jumbo Tsuruta wrestled many times, but there was they had a 60-minute match, and then they had the match that Flair won. With I think it was like a ref bump type finish. It was kind of an American finish. So do you know which one you're talking about?
I think it was like in 1984. It was in Japan.
That might have been a different one because the 83 one was they did the 60-minute match. I mean, they probably wrestled again afterwards.
And I remember a match against Brian Pillman that he had that was just really awesome. It was I think it was in 1990. It was on
WCW Saturday Night Television taping, maybe?
Yeah. Do you remember seeing the match?
I mean, I remember that match real well. Yeah, because it did a great television rating, and it was the match that opened a lot of eyes about Brian Pillman.
That may have been the best match ever to air on the 6:05 time slot.
Well, that's saying a lot because back in I saw in the late 70s and early 80s, I saw a lot of awfully good matches on that show. I mean, Ric Flair had matches with Magnum TA and Ronnie Garvin and probably Ricky Morton and all those guys in the glory days. And that's when those matches were just super matches.
Yeah, on that tape they have that Steamboat Flair match from the Saturday night. It was like a month after that pay-per-view where they had the double pin. Yeah.
Well, they had like the 40-minute match. Well, did you ever see the one with it was Steamboat and Eddie Gilbert maybe against Flair and Wyndham?
Didn't they hype up like a mystery partner like that whole show?
Right, mystery partner and Steamboat came in. That's when Steamboat came in to win the title from Flair. Yeah, that whole night. That was like January '89, I think.
Yeah. It was actually real bizarre. I remember watching during that feud, Flair was supposed to be the heel, but Steamboat was just getting booed out of the building.
Nah, it was 50-50. I mean, it was. I mean, I remember in Chicago when they had the first big match, and I think that one was probably 60-40 Flair.
Well, yeah, but when I go back and I watch those interviews that Steamboat give, I don't know, he kind of comes off like a heel. Like now when I watch him.
Well, today's standards, it was like that. The trends were changing. Rick Martel's very similar to Rick Steamboat. Kind of good looking, good physique, good athletic thing.
Rick Martel ever wrestles? Rick, did you ever wrestle Steamboat?
Did you ever wrestle Steamboat? Oh, yeah.
Did he say, has he?
No, he never did.
That'd be a pretty good match.
It would have been a really good match, yeah.
Yeah. I would have enjoyed
Flair. It was like, I think it was in 1984. It was like an AWA versus NWA title match.
What, the Flair Rick Martel match from Tokyo?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just talking about that match earlier. Yeah. Yeah, that was a super match too.
What about the Bob Backlund versus Ric Flair match? I think that was like in 1982.
Yeah, I never saw it, but I heard it wasn't that great. But that was 82. I mean, nobody had VCR. They didn't videotape matches. Nobody knew these matches would be worth money, 20 years later.
What was your opinion of the Bob Backlund Bret Hart matches? I remember they had one on WWF Superstars that Bret just did an awesome performance.
Yeah. I mean, I remember the one where they had the chicken wing forever, and then I remember they had I think it was a WrestleMania match years later that was not good.
That match was horrible. I'm talking about the one. This is the original match for Backlund turned heel.
I just don't remember them. I remember seeing one Bret Hart Bob Backlund match when I thought that it wouldn't be good, and it was great. So that might be the one you're talking about. But
yeah, that was a terrific match. Yeah, that. I don't think that angle really didn't draw, but that was one of my favorite angles ever. The good guy goes crazy.
Bob Backlund as a heel. He was very entertaining. Yeah.
What about Bob Backlund runs for president?
Oh, that was really entertaining. I mean, I liked when they sent Bob Backlund on spring break. When he was yelling at everyone for being in the sun and all the teenagers on spring break. I mean, I just thought that stuff was just hilarious.
Well, hey, where's Hakushi? Because whenever I watch some of his matches, they're pretty awesome. He's
wrestling for Michinoku Pro as Jinsei Shinzaki. Regular.
Yeah, I was watching some of his matches against the 1-2-3 Kid.
He had a good match with Bret Hart. He had a great match on Raw with Bret Hart. That was one of the better Raw matches too.
Did they wrestle at an In Your House also?
Believe so. I'm sure they did because they had like kind of a program. Because remember he did the moonsault off the
that period where they totally pushed Diesel and they made Bret Hart a mid Carter.
Yeah, I think that's when that was. Yeah.
The influence of the clique.
Yeah. Anyway, Dave, we've got to get running. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we'll talk to you later.
All right.
All right. Let's head to San Francisco and Matt. Matt, you're up with Rick Martel.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good, thanks.
Good. I have some fond memories, and I'm pretty sure you do too, Dave, of '84 San Francisco AWA days with Martel holding the title.
I remember a couple of Martel Nick Bockwinkel matches in San Francisco, maybe Oakland. I don't remember. I remember one at the Cow Palace very, very distinctly because I think that the ring collapsed either before. It wasn't in his match, it was the match before or after. When I think Mass Superstar and Greg Gagne and some other guys were in the ring. But I just remember that Bockwinkel and Rick had wrestled. I think it was like 35, 40 minutes. It was a long, long match at the. I know it was the Cow Palace because I'm starting to remember it now.
Dave, do you remember? I don't know if you remember, but '84. I can't remember what month or whatnot. They had an AWA show there with a tag team battle royal, and the main event after the battle royal was supposed to be Brody and Blackwell.
And Brody wasn't there?
Oh, Brody was there.
Oh, okay. So I do remember the show. Okay, then I was at the show because I remember Brody and Blackwell doing a big brawl at the Cow Palace.
Yeah, that was a great match. Didn't Martel, Rick? Didn't you work that show?
No, it was a tag team. I wasn't on there.
No. Jeez. Yeah, that was.
Now, did you, Rick? Do you remember? It must have been. I'm trying to remember. Would you and Tito Santana wrestled Gagne and Brunzell in a couple of matches back early 80s before you had to run in the WWF?
Yeah, as well as Dino and I against Greg and Jim.
Yeah.
That's right. Dino was working the AWA for a little bit. Right. I remember that they had him on TV I think for 2 weeks or something. I remember the run with you guys. Jeez. Well, that was back in the day. Fabulous Ones, the Road Warriors. Boy,
that was
I was a kid then, and that was my first taste of live wrestling.
Oh, going to Cow Palace?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You walk in the building at that time, and you could feel the history in that building. Unlike today, you walk in the Cow Palace, it's the same old.
Well, I think I think every arena had its own little. I don't know, Rick. When you wrestled, because this is the territorial area, when you had wrestled, weren't there certain arenas that had different auras to you? Whereas now I think when you watch the TV, it sort of seems like any arena, they're not quite interchangeable because the different cities have different crowds, but they're more interchangeable than they were back in say the 80s or something.
Yeah, because I believe about all the what's around the wrestling, all the lighting and all the entertainment around it. Back then, was down. Everything was to the basics, So of course, like the Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis, you had all those different buildings, in Tampa, the auditorium there. All those buildings had something, that you walked in there, and even not only for the fans, but also especially for the wrestlers, we'd go in there. I don't know the tradition that was in those buildings, like the Cow Palace. You'd go in there and you walk in the ring, and you walk in that building, and there's just something about it that you wanted to perform to your best that day because you were there, and you knew who were there before you, and the matches that took place there. Yes, it did. It has something.
No, Rick, because we had to hit break right now, but I want to ask you, were you a big fan growing up as a kid, or was it more like, your brother did it and then you kind of fell in? It was your older brother who did it, right? And then you got into it?
Yeah. Yes, I got to be, I was about 10 years old when my brother started, and instantly, he brought me with him to the matches. And I was, a big fan right off the bat. Right away I enjoyed it. I loved it, but as a kid, beforehand, I remember watching matches, and I always was, thrilled to watch wrestling.
Okay, guys, now it's time for WF Daily Trivia, brought to you by RC Edge. The first two people to respond correctly via email to DaveMeltzer@Yahoo.com will win a poster of a WF Superstar, courtesy of RC Edge. And remember to include your mailing address with your answer. Also, if you've won anything from IATA in the past 60 days, you are not eligible to win. Here's today's question. Name 2 full-time WWF performers from the past 5 years who actually played in an NFL regular season game. That doesn't mean they were on the team and didn't play. They had to actually play in a game, which actually makes the question a little bit harder. Anyway, we're here with Rick Martel. We have a lot of emails here for Rick. Before we get to the emails and everything, also you can call in at 1-877-392-3200. What was your favorite territory to work of all the places that you went to?
Definitely, there was 2, like WBF, back with Vince Sr., was really enjoyable. I mean, I enjoyed that because the atmosphere that was there, was like camaraderie, and of course Vince Sr. was, what a great promoter and a great guy to work for. And also, of course, I enjoyed Hawaii because of, it's like vacation there. It's a great place, beautiful place, but those were my 2 favorites.
Do you have a place where you feel like you went where you, because of whether it was the atmosphere, the fans, or whatever, or just because you worked so many nights, that you felt you improved your game the most in, or like learned the most? Like territory you're really glad you went to because, it helped you establish your career, if you know what I mean, learn a lot?
Oh, yes. New Zealand, because, of course, I was around Mark Lewin and King Curtis, and, I was there for 10 months with those guys and learned about the business, about interviews, about everything, about angles, everything with those 2 guys, and it was great. That's really where I learned the most, where it made me, change a lot of my style, a lot of my stuff.
What was the origination of the model gimmick? You were in WWF for a while. I think you did take a break, and then they came back with the vignettes, and they did the thing with the tennis outfit, and yeah. Okay, well,
it's like I said earlier, I want to be healed. Then finally when Vince finally said, okay, we'll give it a try, and, now I'm going to be a heel, but now I didn't know what kind of gimmick, right? So, J.J. Dillon came up with the model, Mm-hmm. He said, because I always like to dress nice, and he said, hey, it could be called a model, and then I remember Vince telling me that. I'm going, oh, man. I said, what am I going to do with that, And then finally, my wife said to me, says, well, be thankful they didn't call you a rooster, I said, yeah, you're right. You got a point there. So I started, and I'll tell you, I'm the one that developed the character, about the runaway stuff, all the interviews, the whole creating, I created the model, from A to Z. And what, you remember what Lord Hayes would say when I would go on the runaway and stuff? I would be the one that gave him the material, and I thought about that character. I love that character. I loved it. I love doing it, and I'm glad that the fans enjoyed it as much as I did.
What was your thoughts? I guess it's about 87-ish. You were, I guess, probably en route to a WF Tag Team title with Tom Zink, and he left. Exactly what happened? Because there were a million stories that came out of that, which. Okay. Some were not true, Yeah,
well, I'll tell you what happened is, we had, Vince loved it. He loved that gimmick, Can-Am, and we really got over really fast and quick, and fans really loved it, and we could feel that he was going somewhere. Dave was like almost overnight, we did like a couple of TVs, and then the first time we hit the road, live shows, you could feel it, that we were going places, and what happened is that Tom, had Tom Zink just couldn't handle success. He had a history of quitting when things, were great, and we were going there. We were making tremendous money. we were just starting. We were going, to make a lot more. And all of a sudden, his attitude started, starting to get a big head, and I'm the one, like, after the matches, I was the one giving him pep talks, where he could have been the other way around. I'm the veteran. He should be the one excited and say, oh, Ray, this is great, we're doing fantastic, and look where we're going. And it was the other way around, and he started getting a big head. And also, I remember they had a memo saying that we couldn't wear jeans, in WWF, in '87. And all of a sudden, I remember one day, we showed up at the match at the building with jeans, and he's putting our team, so I went to him and said, look, what are you doing this for? Oh, man, then with those rules, he's starting, instead of being thankful for the big break he had, because he was making 50, a year before that, he was making $50 a night in Portland, Oregon. Now he's making thousands of dollars a week, and I'm saying, oh, what an ungrateful. And I remember we had an argument, that night. I'm saying, look, I know what's wrong. What's wrong is your attitude, I says, I don't know who you think you're becoming or, who you think you are, I says, here we are, we have the biggest break, that people can hope for, and you think you're God's answer to wrestling, So, the next morning, I got up. We were supposed to go to interviews. There was a little piece of paper with the keys of the rental car saying, Rick, thanks for the break, but, it's finished, and that was it.
Is there like any story behind, your loss of the title to Stan Hansen? Was it just simply, they came to you and said this is the time, or was there more to it than that?
In fact, I'm the one that suggested it, that I lose the title, because I bought in a third promotion in Montreal, and I remember, I could feel that, I wasn't, Vern, the way he would say, see things and the way I would see things when we didn't agree much. And so finally I could feel it was coming on, I says, well, before it does, I suggested Stan, because I'd wrestled Stan many times. In fact, we wrestled together. We started almost in Texas. We had some really good matches, Stan and I, in '75, and I, he's a good friend of mine. And I said, well, and Stan being the hot star in Japan, he was right away. Vern thought it was a great idea, Mm-hmm. And we went with it, and as it turned out, Vern wasn't such a good thing for Vern.
This is from Oliver Postlewaite from Ottawa, who says, I grew up watching Rick in international wrestling, and I used to see him live at the Robert Guertin Arena in Hull. I have so many memories from that time, but the strongest is an angle that you did where you smashed a beer bottle over your head and bled like crazy. I think it was in a feud with Steve Strong. And he goes, do you remember this, and what were your thoughts about international wrestling during that period of time?
Yes, I remember that night very well, the bottle and everything, and it had a great impact, people couldn't believe I did it. I've seen the Beast done at Rudy Kay's brother, I've seen him do that in Hawaii. In fact, I was in a cage match against him in Hawaii, and for that interview, he did it, with the beer bottle burning the blood, and I'm going, wow, this is great, And I remember being in that match against Steve Strong, and Steve Strong was such a strong character, and I mean, and I needed to put some spice into it and make, really like things were going to happen in that cage match. I said, well, let's go ahead with that beer bottle. I'm going to do it. And people went, are you crazy? Are you nuts or what? And I did it, and, we put it in slow motion on TV and it looked fantastic,
Now, did you ever do that in Portland? Because I seem to remember, I don't know if it was you.
Roddy Piper did it in Portland.
Okay, and you were Roddy Piper's tag team partner then, right?
Right, and I remember the night before Roddy did it on Saturday, because he was with me in Hawaii when we both saw it at the same time when the Beast did it. And I remember him and I, the night before, we're at the outside our motel, our motel room, and we both in front of our yard, with a beer bottle in each hand, we said, well, we got to try this, and we both did it that night, of course, with a couple of beers inside. And then the next night, Roddy did it on Portland TV.
Let's go to James in New Jersey. James, you're up with Rick Martel.
Is this Rick Martel?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I just tuned in late. At least there's one person out here worth respecting. Now, I have a question. Dave Melzer, how long did it take to wipe the brown off your nose at the last Thursday at the Tillman show? Because you're such a brown nose of his WWF marks.
That's really intelligent. See you later. Oh, God. Let's see. Where were we? This is from Scott in Maine, who was asking, how would you compare working to the AWA and working in the WWF in the 80s? Oh, wait, before I get to that, as far as the international wrestling goes, now you said that you were like a 1/3 owner at one point. What happened there? Like, did you get out and then go to WWF or?
Yes, exactly. You see, we were doing great. We had some really good crowds, and business was great. But we getting pressured by the television because Vince by then was kind of taking over wrestling, as you know, with sending his tapes free, and with better quality than our tapes, of course. And so the TV station manager, were pressuring us every week. Well, you got to invest more in your television, and look at these guys, and we could have his tape for free, and look at you guys. And so I could see what was coming on. So I said, well, before the ship started to sink, I said, I'm gonna head out here, So I went and had a secret meeting with Vince. With nobody knew it. At a secret meeting with Vince, and then I came up. Vince wanted me as a single, and I came up with the idea with the Can-Am connection. I said, look, I got this kid. He never saw Tom Zink in his life. He didn't even know who he was. Never heard from him. And I said, look, I'm sure it's gonna work. Look, this, how, and this and that, and he said, okay, Rick, I'm gonna take your word for it, and we're gonna go with this idea of yours, and he did, and the idea worked, but it's just the wrong guy.
But now, as far as like afterwards, with Santana, you guys worked a lot with Hart Foundation, Demolition, the various teams that were in the WWF at that time. Is there anyone from, in any period in your career where you really didn't like working with them, where it was just sort of like you went into where they were in your territory or something, and it was one of those things where you kind of rolled your eyes and go, oh boy, this was, this won't be a fun night.
Yeah. Well, in fact, I'll tell you that when I first went into WWF, back in the days of Vince Sr., I came, from the South, or Georgia and Florida and Texas and, all these places. And I came, from Portland, where he had a great crew, Buddy Rose and, Roddy and them. And then here I am, 25 or something, wanted to get over like, gangbusters in WWF, in New York City, the big town, And I go there, and I remember my first night in, I'm working against Baron Saxuna. And, oh, man, Baron didn't want to do anything, and I wanted to jump all over, And so it's hard to get adjusted to that type of thing, And I remember Giant, came to me and said, Rick, don't worry, look, this is how it works here, and, take your time, and, eventually you'll get who you want to work with. And so I was patient, and things paid off. But those were hard nights, for me to go through.
When you first went to WWF, it was not, there weren't a lot of really, I'd say, athletic style wrestlers. Kind of your style was more of a real big, slow guy territory. Right,
exactly. That's what I mean. Like a really slow type thing, and not much, spots and stuff, and and then of course, you had Don Morocco was just, with the Intercontinental title, and man, when I could, work with Don, it was great. I really enjoyed that. But other than, and slowly it turned around, things.
Do you have like of all the various tag partners that you had over the years? Do you got like a favorite one? Was it Tito or somebody else?
Yeah. Well, of course, I really enjoyed with Tony Gurria as much inside as outside. And we're 2 times a tag team title holder, and I enjoyed that. But also, Tito was a great partner. But I'll tell you, of all those things, of all those guys that I, was partnered with, Tommy Rich, and we had a great run in Georgia. together. But all those guys, I'll tell you, if the Can-Am connection would have stayed the course, and I mean, Tom Zink and I, we could have got over. I mean, that Can-Am connection to me I felt would have been the best thing I could have done.
You can buy the Logitech QuickCam Express for just under $50. Check out quickcam.com. But you can win one right here. Now, this is one where you got to call up to give us the answer, and you'll get a webcam. It's not an email one. So anyway, here is the question. It involves Rick Martel. And Rick Martel, just a few minutes ago, had mentioned his tag team with Tony Gurria. When Rick Martel and Tony Gurria were in the WWF, they held the WWF tag team titles a couple of times. Who did they win the championships from? So anyway, you got to have all of the teams they beat to win the titles. And that's our trivia question. So we'll start taking answers to that in just a second. Before we get some callers on that, I want to ask Rick, we got several emails about your match with Jake Roberts in the blindfold match. And were you really blind, and what was it like working out that match?
Yeah, well, it wasn't, we could see a little bit, not much. It was hard. In fact, the first night that we tried this, I never had a blindfold match before that. So we had a trial match in West Palm Beach, Florida. And I remember, I put this thing on my head, and it was hard to see. But, of course, Jake was such a great worker, and he had done those matches before, and he led me through it. The things are, really good. It really clicked.
Okay. We've got Dave from San Francisco. You're first up, trying to win the cam.
Yeah, I got the answer to your question.
You probably do. Okay.
They won them from the Samoans. They lost them to the Moondogs. Then they won them from the Moondogs. Then they lost them to Fuji and Saito.
That's correct.
Got it. That's
Thanks,
it.
Guys.
Okay, got to hang on and give your address.
San Francisco.
Okay, let's see. We were just talking about that blindfold match. Now, I'm trying to remember, did Jake disappear right after that, or did you? Because I seem to remember the blindfold match and somebody disappeared.
I did.
The match.
I did.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
No, was that like kind of your like if you had given notice and you were going to drop that match and then get out? Was that kind of the
correct.
idea?
Yeah.
Okay, what at that point in time, so this is 91? Is that right?
91, yeah.
Okay. What was the mentality of so you would have been how old, like mid-30s at this point?
Yeah, that's correct. I was getting involved with commercial real estate that time now. I knew wrestling was meant to be. I didn't want to finish up. See, all those years, Dave, I see so many wrestlers, especially back then, where, didn't have another life after wrestling, and they hang on and hang on and hang on, and then they just, I didn't want that to happen to me. I said, I'm going to get ready, and so in 91, right after that match, I got involved in commercial real estate, and I started, in that business, and then I came back a couple of years after, 93.
Now, when you left in 91, physically, were you banged up, or were you feeling pretty darn good leaving?
I was feeling good. Oh, yeah, I was feeling really good. Physically, I was feeling good. It was mentally that, it was hard. Wrestling was hard business, and you have to remember that, I started, I'd been in 91, I already been in wrestling, for 18 years, so I didn't want to do that much longer, I said, so physically, was great, but mentally was the hardest,
Now, when you were in wrestling, as far as the training and things like that, did you train differently than the other guys? Because as years went on, the good physique was not unusual. When you started, I wouldn't say there were wrestlers with good physiques, but you had that very very athletic look. It wasn't like it was like a bodybuilder, but not a huge bodybuilder that didn't have mobility. It was, because you had the quickness and everything to go with it. So it was kind of that kind of athletic, track star type of, but bigger than a track star. But you know what I'm saying? That look, is it, did you train differently than other people, or was it a kind of a look that you just were genetically programmed for, or had that all, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, maybe genetically, was like that. But my training and my dieting, was I have to say, that Tom Zank really helped me with that. I didn't, the nutrition, I didn't pay much attention to that. I thought, well, I'd go and, work out for 2.5 hours, and then, the meals, I had all kinds of, too much protein, and I didn't pay attention. Well, Tom Zank taught me about, you should have, so much carbs and so much protein and everything. And, I mean, I really learned a lot from him on that as far as training. He was a bodybuilder before I met him, and I learned a lot from him. And discipline. I've always been very disciplined, and whether I'll be on the road or whether in Europe or wherever, I always diet and went to the gym and stuff.
Let's go to Masad in Pennsylvania. Masad, what's going on?
Hey, Dave, Rick.
Hi.
How are both of you?
Thanks.
Dave, I wanted to ask you a question. Seeing as if All Japan might split up, do you think all the wrestlers would go with Misawa? And if they did, would Misawa be open-minded about them coming to the U.S. or not?
It's too early to tell. I don't. A lot of people thought that was going to happen within the next couple of weeks at the end of this tour, and the impression I get is that because of kind of like what's the word I'm looking for, but respect for Jumbo Tsuruta, that it may not happen so shortly, because now everyone's going like, if we all leave and this company dies, it's like the history of Baba and Tsuruta, kind of dies with the company. So there's somewhat of an aversion that the timing isn't right to make the move. If it does, I don't know what Misawa's thought is, because Misawa was like, there's two types of Japanese wrestlers. There's many different types, but you've got your Japanese wrestlers that, at one point in their career wrestled a lot in the United States, and kind of understand American wrestling and the American thing, and then you get the Japanese wrestlers like Misawa, who really never, he had wrestled matches in the United States, but never wrestled regularly in the United States, and so I don't know, where his mentality is. His style of wrestling is not American, or it's very different from what they do in the United States now, and the All Japan style is, totally different than American style right now. So maybe I don't know if his mentality would just be like, hey, it's not even similar. Whereas like in the 80s, it was different style, but if a guy was great in the United States and went to Japan, they usually could be great there or good there. And here, it's like it's different animals. Like there's some of the greatest wrestlers here would probably go over there and not be good, and certainly vice versa.
And my last question was, if let's just say he does decide that he might come or he might send someone, who do you think is the American wrestler that would blend with them the best?
For All Japan?
Yeah.
Oh boy. That's really hard, because it's like the way their stuff is. It's like, the kind of guys who got over there in the past were like your Stan Hansen, Steve Williams, Stan Hansen, Terry Gordy, Bruiser Brody. So you're talking about, good-sized guys with agility and a lot of athletic ability. But they kind of like that big look. So, kind of like, I think, Rock, it's a different style, and he throws a lot of punches. It's hard. If he could do the forearms instead of the punches, because he's got, he's agile and big at the same time, I could see him. I don't know. Is there anyone you could think of offhand?
Myself?
Either of you. As far as like a wrestler of today who would like fit in with like the All Japan style of American form, forearm. Maybe Booker T. If he's given the opportunity.
Booker T does all those great moves, leg. I think it would. It looks great. I think he would do great there.
Hmm.
Myself, I think Triple H has proven he can fight any style.
It's a different style. He's a great worker. I think that's a different style of work. But and that's not saying he couldn't go there and adapt and be real good at it. And also the thing is with Triple H is he's pretty good at working the crowd, and that's probably something that they need a little bit of. It'd be interesting. Like a guy like Van Damme, I would say, to be a top guy there, no, the style doesn't work as a top guy main event style. Even though Van Dam's been there, Van Dam's style is more of a mid-card All Japan. When he was there. I'm just trying to think who the other. So many of the best young guys here. I'm trying to think of who. I don't know. No one's really popping into my head right now. As far as Angle, to me, Angle's more New Japan style than All Japan. I think Angle would do very well there if he got the opportunity. I think though. I mean, as far as like, Angle would I think would do real well in that tag team role. Of course, Benoit would do if he went. Benoit would do tremendous there because he knows what to do there. I don't know.
He's already been tremendous.
What?
He's already been tremendous in Japan.
Yeah. But it was with New Japan. Benoit's never gone All Japan.
Yeah.
And there are differences, but he would do great. Obviously and he would get over great because the Japanese kind of think of him as almost one of them anyway because they know that he trained. He started his training there and his early career was there.
All right, I know you guys got to go.
All right. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Let's see what else we got going. We're gonna, as far as what are some of the other territories? Did you ever work Carolinas?
No, I never did. I never. I mean, a lot of people ask, because I was there, in, Georgia and Florida, Texas, and when I was about to go to Carolina, that's when I got, because that was going to be my next move after Georgia, to go to Carolina. I'd met, Rick Flair, and everybody was saying, Rick, you should come there, and you should go, and then I met Mark Lewin, who said, he told me about Australia and New Zealand, and I knew I needed to get away from the States and make a break and then come back later, get a couple of years of experience before I came back to the States, and so I didn't get a chance to go to Carolina.
Do you ever wrestle like one of the European circuits, like England circuit or like Autobahn circuit or anything like that?
Yeah, I wrestled for Otto. Went to Austria, and Germany for Otto, because I met Otto back in the AWA, and we traveled together a couple of times, and so he called me when I was at WBF, and I told him, I said, look, when I'm finished here, definitely I'll come for you and for a couple of tours, and I did.
Is there any, like a lot of wrestlers, stayed in the States, and then, you pretty much went everywhere. Was it just the opportunity called, or did you have, when you started in wrestling, the idea that, one of the perks of wrestling was that you were going to get to travel the world?
Yes, when I started, I wanted to learn, as much as I could, a different style and see as many different wrestlers from all over the world, and I said the only way possible was to go travel, and see, in fact, when I went to New Zealand, that's when I went to Singapore and all those places, and I met all these different guys, and, to me it was the best way to learn. I mean, the different style, different wrestling, and I'm glad I did.
Is there any place that you went that you hated? Or said, like, you went on, like, one trip to, and just said, man, this part of the world I'm never going back to?
Yeah, South America, I went to, Caracas, and, oh, man, it was rough. We couldn't even get out of the, at night they said you couldn't get out of the hotel, because you'd be dangerous, and I didn't like those kind of places, and I was offered a lot of tours when I was off in '91, and again when I took off in '94, I was offered a lot of tours in India and South Africa and all those places, and in fact, that tour where that Chris got injured, you remember that the kid from Georgia got injured, and they had a riot, and he got really badly injured.
Is it in India?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they rioted because Chris Walker, right?
Yeah, Chris Walker, exactly. Yeah. I was supposed to be. They asked me to go on that tour. And I didn't want to go to those places. Where I didn't feel, where your security was, better. And I tell you, another place, especially back then, that I didn't care much for. never wrestle in that territory for a long period of time. I just went and did a couple of shots. It was in Puerto Rico. Of course, my brother died there. So I went back there when Frenchie Martin was there. I wrestled as his brother. I went there for a couple, and it was such a dangerous place. I didn't really enjoy that.
Yeah, that was, you went to Puerto Rico, was that before or after what happened to Brody?
Was before.
Okay, yeah, because...
Yeah, I went, before once, and I went after, a couple of years after I went once.
Oh, just for like one shot in and out?
Yeah, I never worked that territory a long time.
Yeah.
I just went there for, one shot or two.
Now, you worked for a long time for, was over a year probably, maybe longer for Don Owen, right?
Yes. I went for Don about 10 months around there. Yeah, that was just before I went to WWF.
Was there any, we talked a little bit about it, they had Buddy Rose and Roddy Piper and people like that. And as I recall, I think Kurt Hennig might have been there too. They had a lot of guys in that territory that went on, to be great workers. Was it just, as far as the Oregon, is there anything about the Oregon territory that you felt just because, I don't know, I guess there's a lot of, getting a lot of interview time, or that you worked long matches, you worked 6 nights a week or whatever it was that led to so many of the wrestlers developing well there?
Yeah, that, and also Don Owens, much to his credit, was a great promoter. He gave a lot of leeway to the guys. You could be creative, and you could, you didn't have a booker that would, hold you down and have his little click or whatever. You could go there and be creative, and man, Don was tremendous. He gave you your chance, give you a chance to develop as a wrestler, and that's why a lot of guys went there and all of a sudden, blossom into top workers,
When you were a kid, you mentioned you started watching wrestling at the age of 10. Was it Montreal Wrestling?
Right. Yeah.
Is there anyone in particular as far as like a favorite wrestler?
Of course, Mad Dog Vachon here in Quebec, is our big idol here, and also you had Johnny Rougeau, who was the promoter, and he also worked, he was a big star here, and Carpentier, So those were the big stars here.
Okay, Rick, we are totally out of time right now. I want to thank you very much for doing the show, and we'll try to do this again. And best of luck, and hope you have a good retirement, and you're not lured back, because too many of the guys get lured back and then kind of feel weird about it.
Well, no, you can take my word for it, Dave. I'm not getting back. I have no intention of doing so, and I'm enjoying my life too much for that right now. And also, I want to take the opportunity, to thank all the fans, in the States and all over, the world. They had some great times, and also want to congratulate you for your success. I remember you, Dave, from years ago, your first starting, and I remember in the dressing room, say, "Who's this guy? What is this?" And newsletter, what? And here you are now, big success, and it's great for you.
Well, thanks very much. I appreciate that, and good luck to you. And don't forget, we'll be back here tomorrow at 6.